east side of Elkhart. This was approximately 10:07 p.m. and thereafter, two police officers from the Elkhart Police Department responded to that call, and as a result, were engaged in a police action shooting resulting in the death of Sean Bear, who had been engaged in criminal activity inside the building. The matter was turned over to the Indiana State Police for investigation. That investigation on the police action shooting was turned over to my office earlier this month. I have reviewed the conduct of the police officers in question, and I am here to advise that those police officers, Skipper and Officer Tripp of the Elkhart Police Department, acted reasonably in their conduct on January 15 in subduing the suspect Sean Bear by the use of deadly force. In making that determination, there will be no need to convene a grand jury, and that matter will be closed. By way of review, and as I say, the primary purpose of my examination is to review the police conduct. And while some might believe that the actions speak for themselves in terms of what occurred, it is appropriate anytime police take action and a death is involved or serious injury that we take consideration to make sure that the conduct was appropriate. That's the best way to ensure the quality of the community. In reviewing the information from the Indiana State Police, I was able to determine that on January 15, about 30 minutes before the shooting, Sean Bear had entered the Martin supermarket dressed in a long dark coat and proceeded to walk through the store, seemingly on a cell phone from time to time, for approximately 30 minutes. At a particular point in time, close to the time of the call in, he dropped his coat, pulled out a gun that was later identified as a .40 caliber handgun, was also armed with a large knife, and while on the west side of the aisles in the store, proceeded towards his first victim, Crystal Dykes. Our information is that he took 3 shots, missing 1 shot, hitting 2, and 1 fatal on Ms. Dykes. Very close in time with that particular action, he was confronted by a couple of Martin's employees. One Martin's employee was told to stop, to run. She ran, and she was able to scream and notify others in the store that there was a shooter in progress, and he took a shot at her, missed her. She was able to get away, and she was also able to advise others to flee the store. At about the same time that she confronted the shooter, another Martin's employee had observed what was occurring and was able to get away, and was also able to make a 911 call, which fortunately was the beginning of seeking help to stop the situation. The 911 call came in, and the dispatch was able to get these police officers en route in less than a minute, and it was to everyone's fortune that the 2 police officers were in close proximity, arriving less than 3 minutes from the time the call came in. At the point where Mr. Bear took the shot and missed, he then proceeded eastwardly in the store, going down the aisles, or across the aisles, and subsequently came upon the second victim, Rochelle Godfrey. He fired 3 shots at her, 1 shot missed, 2 shots hit, 1 shot was fatal. Following his shooting of Ms. Godfrey, he rounded the corner of one of the aisles and confronted one of the store's managers. And in confronting the manager, there was then about a 2 to 3 minute process whereby the manager was on his knees and being taunted, if you will, by Mr. Bear while he was armed with his gun and his knife. It was during this particular time that the police arrived. And from a protocol standpoint, you should understand that the police are trained, and these are changes that have occurred in the last several years. The police are trained that when there's a situation of an active shooter, we don't just sit outside and wait for the cavalry. Training now requires that police officers go in and take control of the situation. The idea is that there are lives at stake, and the best opportunity is to go in and confront the situation. That's whether you have 10 officers with you or if you have yourself. That's the training. These two officers had gone through that training, and the training kicked in. Upon their arrival, they had been given information and confirmed upon their arrival that there was an active shooter in process. They entered the Martin supermarket armed with their assault rifles, the AR-15s, and proceeded to locate and track Mr. Bear. At the point in which they arrived, as I said earlier, Bear had the manager in front of him on his knees and was taunting him with the gun. We can see on the store video the point at which the police arrived, where both Bear and the store manager, their attention were diverted to the front of the store. The manager was able to leap up and run. The gun was pointed at him, but for reasons unknown, a shot was not fired at that point in time. Bear then proceeded to run back up north of one of the aisles, and the police took pursuit to identify what occurred. Now, at this point in time, the police had not been able to determine by their own sight of what had occurred inside. They were aware that there was a shooter inside. They were aware that there was possibility of injury or hostages. So they had to clear the aisles, clear the store, and make their way to the bad guy. They were able to locate the store manager quickly. He was able to indicate the direction that the suspect was in, and that he was armed with a gun and armed with a knife. Based on that information and working in a two-man formation, Officer Skipper and Officer Tripp proceeded to move towards the direction that they were told the individual would be, clearing the aisles, and turning up a particular aisle, did in fact confront Mr. Bear, who was at the other end of the aisle, armed with a gun and a knife. He was given a command by one of the officers. This is words to the effect, EPD, drop the gun. He did not respond to those commands. He raised his gun, and as he raised his gun, the officers opened fire and fired 10 rounds towards Mr. Bear, striking him 8 or 9 times, with at least one of those shots fatal. At the point in which Mr. Bear was raising his firearm, he was able to raise his arm sufficiently to his head, and he placed his .40 caliber weapon to his temple, and also fired a shot, both the shot to his head and at least one of the rounds that penetrated his heart would have been fatal rounds. The officers then secured the scene, secured the suspect, cleared the remaining parts of the building, and turned the matter over to the Indiana State Police. That's the conduct that I believe is appropriate under the circumstances, given the fact that they were confronted with an armed situation and notification that they were not shooting in the process. There had been, as an aside, as I say, I'm here primarily with regard to the police action shooting, but there's additional information that we now have that we're still under investigation. I believe the state police conducted their initial press release in this press conference in this matter. We now know that Bear shot or fired his weapon 8 times. 3 times in his attack on Crystal Dykes, 1 time in his attack on the young lady who was able to get away, 3 times on his attack with Ms. Godfrey, and of course 1 final time when he shot himself. There had also been some speculation as to the reasons behind this particular attack, speculation on whether the suspect or Mr. Bear, in this case, had any personal knowledge or relationship with any of the victims. Based upon the investigation that's been conducted, there's been absolutely no indication of any relationship place at the wrong time and were the victims of an individual who had made a determination that he was going to take his own life and become homicidal in the process. Following his death, the investigators were able to locate a note that was on his person that did confirm his suicidal tendencies and his interest in dying that particular night. But there's no indication of a long-term plan that was actually targeted at this particular location or for any particular people from that standpoint. It's unknown at this point in time why he chose that particular location or that particular time to take his action. Do you have any questions?
Sorry, the sirens kind of drowned out the note on his person.
The note on his person really indicated that he was suicidal. It was his intention to die that night.
Did he say why? Why he wanted to take his life?
Not in any great detail. It certainly appears that he has had some, and this is from the investigation, he has apparently had some suicidal tendencies and some apparent mental issues or deficiency over a period of time. It's really unknown in terms of why this particular time or what type of depression may be. That's not something that I have information on.
You mentioned that he had I believe a .40 caliber, maybe another weapon. Do we know how he got those weapons?
Based upon the investigation of the state police and the ATF, which is ongoing, it appears that he got the weapons from private transactions and what appears to be legitimate means from a friend who had a gun. And there is a tracking of where that came from. That's ongoing. But at this point in time, it does not appear that there was anything necessarily illegal about that transaction. As I said, the state police will continue to look into those matters.
You mentioned talking on the phone, and something we've known from the day after this happened. Who was he talking to, and possibly was he texting as well, and what did those text messages say?
We don't know who he was talking to, and that's information that the state police are still working on in terms of the phone. There's been investigation as to friends, family.
We talk about Curtis in an investigation. I mean, you often are able to get the answers that you want to get. You're often able to find out why. This is a case where it sounds like you still have a lot of questions and there are a lot of whys. How difficult is that for you?
Well, keep in mind that in most cases that I handle, and I don't know that we always get the why, but in most cases that I handle, we are prosecuting someone and they're still alive. So a great deal of the information that we secure comes from the fact that we're proceeding in a prosecution where we're gathering evidence and including evidence that we may be able to get from the individual who's here. In this particular instance, a lot of the why died that night. We can't really go into what it is that is in the mind of someone that would commit such a heinous act. We can speculate. Everyone can speculate that, oh, somebody must have been off the rocker to be able to do something like that. That's speculation as to what's occurring. Obviously, anybody who would conduct such an event is disturbed by standards that we all hold dear. But in terms of the actual why people do these types of things, that's not really something that any of us are in a position to address unless we get some really good direct information from those who commit these acts.
In talking with the parents and the mother in particular, is there any reason that you or she thought that she might have been a target? Or?
There's no reason to believe that the mother was a target from my review of the investigation, no.
Is there a possibility that anyone might face criminal charges, or is this case closed on your end?
Well, this aspect of the case is involving the police actions and what they did. It does not appear at this time that there's any reason to believe that there's anyone else involved in the matter. Certainly with regard to any conversation that may have been taking place during Bear's visit to Martin's and cell phone conversations, we would like to find out who he was talking to and the substance of that conversation. That doesn't necessarily mean that it would result in charges, but it could result in a better understanding of what was occurring in his mind or what the thought processes would be. But until we get additional information, there's no reason to believe that there was anybody else involved.
Mr. Hill, do you know if we will ever get the chance to speak with the 2 police officers that were involved in this?
That's not my call. They don't work for me, and I think that I would say a word about that. There's been lots said about the conduct of the police, and I would say this: they did their job. The police are trained to go into situations of that nature, and to do so takes a great deal of grit. And I think people don't take into consideration what it takes to be a police officer. I don't want to take anything away from these 2 particular police officers, but every single police officer in this community and beyond has that grit to go into a situation where there's somebody who's shooting at these holding people hostage or creating harm, and they go in with risk to their lives. That's part of what they do. That's part of what we expect, and it's a part of what we take for granted, unfortunately. So, yes, these 2 police officers did their job. They did it in a courageous manner, and they did it well. But every police officer out there would have done the same thing. I would also say that this circumstance also has, the fact that the police officers were able to get there as quickly as they did, has a great deal to do with the young lady who came upon Mr. Bear after the first shot. She was told, stop, don't move, words to that effect. Had she done so, she probably wouldn't be here today. She ran. Not only did she run and she was screaming, active shooter. And as she ran out, he took a shot at her, missed. She continued to run. And when she ran through, she was able to help clear people out of that store. Those were other victims. Those were other victims. Also, the individual who came upon the scene from the other side, about the same time as the lady, a male, was undetected. He was able to get his phone and make the first 911 call. Those things had as much to do with saving lives as anything else. So it's the total situation. We were very fortunate that this wasn't a worse situation than it was. Bad as it was, it could have been a great deal worse. So the police officers did their job. The folks in that store, that wasn't their job to do, but they responded in a very appropriate manner and a manner which is a very strong contributor to the lives that were saved.
Are the 2
Yeah,
police?
how many people were in the store when the shots first rang out?
That's not altogether clear. I can tell you that fortunately, it was at a time and a circumstance where there wasn't a great deal of people in the store. As I say, he got to the store about 30 minutes before he started shooting, and it's really unclear as to what his purpose was in being there that early. We can speculate that he's looking to see how many people. We can speculate that he's trying to work his nerve up. But the honest answer is, we just don't know what he was doing during that period of time when he was meandering through the store. Some might suggest, well, is it unusual to be meandering through the store? People use retail outlets as social occurrences all the time. I mean, there's a deli there, people hang out there and drink coffee, so I don't know if that's unusual that you have somebody hanging out in the store in and of itself. So we just don't know what he was doing prior to that. But in terms of the number of people that could have been involved, there was a low number of people there, not very many customers. And I'm not sure the number of staff, but most of the staff was able to get out before he found his second victim.
Did he just walk around, or did he stop and order anything, or
I'm not aware of any ordering of anything. It doesn't mean that he didn't. It appears from the observations that we were able to make that he wandered quite a lot. But I'm not aware of any indication that he actually ordered or purchased anything.
Are the 2 police officers back on active duty today, or do they have more time off?
I'm not aware of that situation. That's a Elkhart Police Department protocol. My understanding typically is that when there is a shooting, they are suspended or not suspended, but placed on administrative leave rather until such time as a determination has been made with regard to their conduct. And it's also my understanding that the police department will conduct their own internal investigation, but that's not something that I've engaged in.
Can you say anything about what was said between Bear and
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you say anything about what was said between Bear and the store manager, and whether that shed any light on his mindset?
I can't really say a great deal about what was said. There was certainly no audio available for us from video surveillance. And we do have some limited information from the store manager that, as you might imagine, that's somewhat fractured in the circumstances of what occurred. It appeared to be, there was some indications of taunting, suggesting that he should pray for his life, things of that nature. As I say, taunting, it appeared to be trying to scare him, as best I can tell. Unclear as to what his final motivations would have been because it was interrupted at the time of explosive arrival.
As far as you're aware, you talked about previous suicidal tendencies that Mr. Bear had. Were there any warning signs that something like this could be on his mind or something like this could happen if he was previously determined to be suicidal?
Warning signs to who?
Anyone, family members, friends, teachers, anyone.
I can't answer that question. I don't know that such a circumstance is predictable by any means behavior. We live in a free society, and we have people who have problems. And is it to say that someone has a particular mental issue or disturbance? Does that mean that person is going to become a homicidal individual? There are some people who have done that, but that really is still in the small numbers. I can't really address what someone who would have known Bear would have anticipated or thought he was capable of doing. The investigation suggests that friends and family members, while thinking that he was possibly suicidal, I'm not aware of anyone who had reported to the state police through investigation that they believed he was homicidal necessarily. But it does appear that he did have some fixations with mass murder situations or some antisocial behavior. That's not necessarily, unfortunately, unusual. There are many people who may have some fixations of a similar type, whether they act on it or not. That's a case-by-case situation, very hard to predict.
Why has it taken it this long?
Why has it taken what? How long?
The investigation taken this long? I mean, we have the video, we have the surveillance tapes. I mean, why has it taken this amount of time?
Well, I think that's a relative term. I don't think it's taken that long at all. You're talking about a shooting that was double homicide. You're talking about police action shooting, and we want to carefully review what the police officers did. From that standpoint, we want to gather the evidence, the information and evidence that's at the scene. We need to process it. Most of the time it was taken, processing the evidence was in terms of firearms and ballistic testing to make determinations of what occurred as best we can with regard to the rounds and the order that things went through. So what we don't do is just simply throw up our arms and guess and say, well, it looks like it happened like this, and walk away. The idea to be able to provide the community, which is why we're here, with an understanding of what occurred, is to do as thorough a job as possible in terms of making a determination precisely what happened. We had a fair idea of what happened on January 15th, but now we have a much better idea of what happened. We have a little bit better understanding of the why. It may not be as why as we would all want to know, but we have a better understanding of that. So from the standpoint of how long it's taken, relative term, I think the last testing that the state police had for my purposes was right around the 1st of March. And from that standpoint, again, we have to review what we have.
What do we know about the way Martin's store security acted?
Again, please?
You've talked a lot about the way the police officers acted that night. What about Martin's did have some store security? What do we know about now the way that the store security acted?
Well, I think security at Martin's, and I'm not, I certainly wouldn't hold myself out as an expert on how they conduct their security, but most stores that have security surveillance are not looking at armed assailants coming to the door. They're typically looking at shoplifting situations and things of that nature, or some, certainly some more casual problems. So from that standpoint, they have security, but not the type of security that's going to be able to stop or prevent this type of thing. As I said before, when you live in a free society, you can't prevent all bad things from happening. I don't think there's anybody here who wants to, I hope there's no one here who thinks that we should start monitoring all people and make sure that we know where everyone is at all times. We just don't do that in America. So under that circumstance, it does leave a fair degree of room for bad things to happen. From the standpoint of what they did, at the point in which the Martin's employees were aware that there was a dangerous situation, they made appropriate steps to contact the police, which was their responsibility. They did not have the ability at that point to deal with it themselves.
Just want to be real clear on the timing. You said when he was confronted by police, he didn't fire any shots at the police, or?
He raised his firearm. He was given the command to drop his weapon. He was in the process of raising his firearm when he was fired. So there was no shots fired by Bear at the police.
Although simultaneously he managed to, while he was being hit, he managed to raise the gun to his head. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. The shot that penetrated his heart was as near as the pathologist could tell, a simultaneous or very close in proximity. It would be difficult to say which came first. And both would have been fatal.
He shot himself in the heart with the head.
Okay.
And then not sure which one of those was the fatal shot.
I beg your pardon?
And the coroner wasn't sure which one was the fatal shot.
Both shots were fatal. It was indeterminate as to one preceding the other. And he has ways of being able to determine that based on pressures and things of that nature, but based on his review, there was no way to make a determination of one or the other.
Do you know if those 911 calls will ever be released, or any of the Martin surveillance video? Obviously, not any of the carnage. No one wants to see that. I hate to see that, but him roaming aisles, possibly getting into.
I will release nothing.
That would have to come from ISD.
I will release nothing
Why is that?
because I don't. It's an investigation. We review information here. Any information with regard to the video, I think, the circumstances would be disrespectful to the families and victims. And I'm happy to provide information so that the community understands what occurred, but I will not participate in any information being presented that will place further harm or trauma to victims.
Did he have a previous criminal record? Was he ever arrested at that school?
Yes, he had minor offenses, relatively speaking. I believe in 2009 he was arrested for drug offenses, possession of marijuana, and possession of controlled substance. He was convicted of those offenses and placed on probation. He was later convicted of a theft offense, and I believe he received some probation on that as well.
Was that at that St. Martin's store?
That I don't believe so, but I'm not very certain. I'm not aware of any connection between that and Martin's.
And there were some coinciding dates there. I mean, do you think that that anniversary from that theft at the other Martin store may have had anything to do with the fact that that is the same day he chose to go into the store and open fire?
I would have there's no, as I said, in the information that I reviewed, including the note that he had on his person, there's no indication that Martin's was a direct target of his activities. It may have been, but there was no indication that I received that would suggest that.
What did the note say on his person?
The note essentially was a send-off to some friends and family, his mother, kind of a sort of a one-line, you were this, you were that type of thing, and then a general comment to those who were not with him in vulgar terms, in terms of what he felt by everybody else. So it's a very short directives on friends and family and general public.
Judging them or?
Pardon me?
Judging them or?
No, judging, I don't know,
You
that's a
said
good
that
question.
it was kind of a congenial send-off to some people and over to others, or?
Well, he had friends and family that he was giving some comments in terms of it was some kind of final resolution type of thing. He expressed support for his mother, for her supporting him, that type of thing. But from from the standpoint of anybody who didn't care about, who expressed what he thought about that.
But it did recognize in some way, shape, or form that this was the end of suicide.
If you read it in its context, it would give rise to a suicide.
You mentioned, you know, he shot two women, he shot at another store employee who was a woman, did not shoot at the store manager. Was there any indication in the investigation that he was targeting women?
No, not that I'm aware of. He clearly did target women, but, and that is an oddity that we don't have an answer for. He may have ended up shooting the store manager, we just don't know. But there's nothing from the information that we received that would suggest that he was after women in particular.
I just have one more question. Is this like one of the hardest investigations you've done through your whole entire career? I mean, in terms of just the severity of it, have you seen anything
Well,
like
it's not a
this?
difficult investigation from that standpoint because we're basically looking at a situation that was self-contained within the events of January 15th. From my standpoint, keeping in mind that I'm here looking at the police action aspect of it, I think if you're getting at, I think your question is really trying to get at the randomness and the horrific nature of a random crime. It certainly is a sad state of affairs when you have such randomness occurring. We have offenses that occur all the time that occur for reasons that we really can't understand. I mean, people hurt each other and do things to each other, and they think they have a reason, and we all shrug our shoulders and say, what kind of reason was that? That happens all the time. I don't think there's anybody who understands that somebody who can be suicidal can want to then go out and hurt innocent people along the way, and what that can do to the community. So it's a very unfortunate circumstance that we've had to deal with that. Despite the tragedy that we have to really count our blessings that it wasn't far worse. Move the times around, move the day around, move a few events around, very few events, and this is an entirely different ballgame in terms of carnage. And as I say, I don't want to depreciate what these victims suffered and what their families are going through, but we're very fortunate that this wasn't far worse in terms of the number of people who were injured or killed.
And given this state of technology, we went back and tried to figure out who was he talking to and who did he call. Was that easy or hard? You confirm that he texted his mother, but
The information with regard to the conversation on the phone is still in the works. That has not been completed.
have you been able to take his phone records? You know what numbers he dialed or?
That's still, the state police are still working on that. We didn't need that information to address what we're doing regarding police action. So that's information that the police are looking into. If something of any relevancy is produced by that, they would present that to me, we would look at it. If there's something to, if there's something that we determine needs to be done about it, we'll do it at that time. Any other questions?